So the problem of these two bolts is this 14 and 15 gauge die sticks on the back of the spoke machine. It holds two dies very tightly together. It can be micro adjusted by these two screws. A 14-15 drop bar has slightly different widths between the 14 and the 15. The 15 is actually smaller. For some reason, in terms of gauge limit, it goes smaller as you go larger. For a while, I could not micro adjust because it's behind. My Morozumi spoke machine was right here near the window. It was difficult to get back here to understand what was happening with this die. This die connects to this die, which is then pulled down. It micro adjusts from here. I had this little bit of containers not even knowing what was in there. So the whole idea is to get these two dies sitting next to each other. And they can be micro adjusted. Everything is built on top of each other. It's a cutting mechanism and then a threading. It weighs quite a bit. It's probably 35, 40 pounds. Like I am, this is heavy. Right here, this cut just real quick. It drops down into here, and we have a measuring stick. But all of this is simply bolted 1, 2, and this whole unit comes off. Bam! And imagine a measuring stick holding it here. This is with it all apart. Taking it apart has not been easy. And the reason that I took it apart is because we were using colored spokes, and they got the paint, as opposed to anodization, whatever that, to anodize a piece of metal means to put color into it, the full width of it. Meaning there's paint on the non-anodized bicycle spoke wheels. It's very important for me to look at the green dot in order to make contact with you, the viewer. But it's hard because you want to look at yourself while you're doing it, and that doesn't really work. But anyway, so the paint got mixed up when the two dies went next to each other, and there's little chippings and little slivers, and ultimately the colored dies, because there's an extra little layer on there, as well as you have to remove a piece, a sliver of it before you even get to the threads, presents an extra challenge. And in order to completely clean it, this Morozumi spoke machine, which, you know, the threads on a spoke are so small, the micro adjust of this delicate machine, it's not delicate, this big heavy machine, but it uses a tremendous amount of force. When you pull this down, you get into it, and you're basically holding a spoke between these two dies very closely. Let's see if I can do this in the air. There we go. I'm holding. See how close these are? You can even see it right here. The spoke goes in between these two metal parts, and I pull it down. I pull it down, and that other part of the mechanism is right here. This little doodad pulls it down. So this machine, I believe it's on sale right now for nearly $3,000. It's a small bike shop like mine. I don't have room. I have 440 something square feet between a bedroom and the rest of the place. It looks like a bus. It's about the width and shape, length. Somebody the other day said it was a shotgun home. That means you can shoot it to the very end. So a way back is my bedroom. The thing is 10 by 10, maybe 10 by 11. I got a real small, what I call a boat-sized kitchen. Behind it is the bathroom. You know, you walk around and you can access the restroom through the shop area. The main shop area is vertical, and because I am 5'7" 1/4, most of the bikes are just above my head. This room is what I call the parts room, has the office and some other shelves, and the entire ceiling is about a foot less, meaning I can have, you know, bicycle wheels on it. But if I was to hang bicycles, yeah, I would have to be 4.5 feet in order to be underneath the bikes. But the whole point of this story is I don't have a whole lot of room for inventory. Hundreds and thousands of spokes that would take up, you know, this much room, as well as thousands of dollars. You know, you got somebody coming in with an arrow spoke or a double butted or black, silver, kids. You know, in order to fix a broken spoke, you have to have a lot of inventory. And unless you're building wheels a lot, which we love to do, we teach wheel building classes, you know, a lot of bike shops, they buy wheels. It's cheaper for us as bike shops to buy a bike wheel. I can get a bike wheel for, you know, $50 or less and sell it for, you know, probably 80, 100, 120, a single wheel, a single replacement wheel. But the point is it would take me a while to build these wheels. Machines build them for us, and you know, you buy a $50 wheel, you sell it, and it takes no time, and you have to have certain stock to run a repair station. Now, if you're, you know, the Vecchios of the world, and you're just replacing, you know, very nice wheels on road bikes, you almost want to hand build all of them. For a repair station, when you just like want to get back on the road, there's certain standards that you want to keep in stock. You know, 700C, 789 cassette, Shimano hub, wheel with, you know, inch of rim width. You'd want one of those. You definitely want. And I could think of at least a dozen other wheels that you'd want to keep in stock. What we have is a little bit spotty, to be completely honest. We should have a list of 26-inch, you know, front wheel with 100 millimeters spacing and 32 spokes, with a list of, you know, 8, 10, 12, 15. It's not that many where you need these different pairs of wheels. There's definitely a finite number, but I don't actually know that number, and it's something I should list because we have limited space. If I had all 15 pairs of those wheels, I'd be borderline being able to even have it. I could put more wheels above the kitchen and below the sunroof. I could get 2, 3, 4, 5 more, you know, maybe 3 or 4 more pairs of wheels right there. The point is if I knew what exactly would need, I could organize the space. Organizing the space in the 21st century is incredibly important. Whether you watch a science fiction movie or you just, see a country with or a city with many, many people packed into the same place, you have to take good use of your space. It's so imperative. I mean, without proper use of this space, which is really close to downtown Boulder, I wouldn't be able to afford to live here. I wouldn't, run a business because how well this space just naturally lands. It is cheap because it's an alley, and it was once a tool shed or a carriage house for a home in front. My room and business, and look at all this. This parts room is just one thing, and I have this desktop doesn't allow me to move it very well. But there's more spaces with lots of bike parts put in. We like to have one of everything. And, that's this idea of a spoke machine with, that amount of space, and to be able to have that much more inventory was the reason that the service station for bike repair bought this product. Because $3,000, that's a big amount for a small business, and yet now we can teach wheel building classes, which wheel building is a lost art, and we can always have broken spoke repair. Plus, I learned how to build wheels. I did not know how to build wheels until I got this machine, because I'd measure the ERD, the estimated rim diameter of the rim, do the copper measures of the hub, put it all into my spoke calculator, and be like, well, that's a spoke that we don't have. What are we going to do? And, of course, I wouldn't build it. And then a week would go by, and I would have 100 million other things. I lost my notes, and that wheel never got built. That's pretty much it. So that's a ridiculous story, so we're not going to tell any more stories about how I didn't know anything about bike repair when I started this business. Long story short, spoke machine equals less inventory. If you want to build wheels, you absolutely want to have this to be able to bust out 32 or 36 per wheel. If you didn't want to build wheels and you just needed to replace spokes, the Hosan spoke machine can do one-off spokes. And if you're a big bike shop, you probably can afford an inventory of spokes. It's not a big deal, especially aero spokes. And who knows, not that many bike shops have a full supply of that either, unless they're, actively building wheels or specifically tailored to triathlon or high-end road racing. We've got a couple in town here. One of them is escaping my memory here. It's right over near McGuckin's. And, Boulder Cycle Sport, Pro Peloton, Vecchio's, and the triathlon store right next to McGuckin's does that type of thing. But even so, some of these Shimano replacement spokes, we can't find them. Or we can, and it's very difficult to get run-ups for these arrow-bladed spokes. So in that sense, even if you did have a spoke machine, you'd still have to have a relatively long list of arrow spokes to be able to accommodate replacement of spokes. Fortunately, that doesn't happen that often, and your riders, that probably isn't a very huge market. Those are the type of riders that are racing or otherwise can wait. Your student or commuter to work, they need a spoke now, and they want to get back on the road. which is also a great reason to have all these wheels in stock. If there's a 27-inch vintage road bike that comes in, and of course it's got 27-inch tires to go with those wheels, I need to have that wheel in order to get that student back on the road today. He is happy to pay 90, 100 something dollars to get his bike fixed right now. If I don't have it, even though I'm the smallest bike shop in town, and that's, an excuse, it's not, because I didn't make any money. He's going to go to a different bike shop, especially if he needs his bike today. And that type of fear that they would go to another bike shop if Standard Bike Repair doesn't have the part drives a lot of the time spent doing inventory. When I started this business, I didn't know anything about bike parts. It is amazing how much there is to know, and I want one of everything. It's not one here and one to go. It's one of everything. I don't need two. My traffic is not so high that we need two sets of shims for converting an 1.5 inch headset tube frame to 1.1 inch. Just one. That doesn't happen that often unless it's a Cannondale or some other, nicer road or mountain bike. I don't know who really does the 1.5 inch headset tubes in the mountain bike. I know Cannondale. There could be other companies. They all have like the tapered tubes. We have one of everything except for things that we use a lot of. Brake pads and cables, bearings obviously, tubes, and tires to some degree. We have just one of everything. But things like derailleurs and cassettes, all those smaller type of components, we're happy to have just one. And if we need more than one that week, then that's a good week. And we can just go to another bike shop and pay retail, because that's one thing that other bike shops are doing almost without knowing it. I can keep an inventory that is less than another bike shop, hold my cash, and go buy it day of. Now, if I'm in the middle of an appointment, that doesn't really work. But let's say I've got a customer, been here for a long time, he's not just going to jump to the other ship, and we need that part, we're going to get it that day and we're going to put it on his bike. We can do that. That's a good way to save cash, and the resources, the abundance of resources in Boulder, the bike resources, is the reason that Standard Bike Repair is alive. A lot of people say, well, how do you start a bike business? There's so much competition in Boulder. And it's not in spite of, it's because of. For instance, University Bicycles has specialized as a dealer. That means they have all 100-something derailleur hangers that can be replaced on a specialized bicycle frame. Derailleur hangers are used for aluminum framed bikes to hang the derailleur. Now, unlike a steel that could just bend back, an aluminum frame could break. And what's happening, a derailleur hanger is a real small piece at the end of a frame that is essentially dangling from the frame. And whether your bike gets smashed in the bike lock area or you fell, these things can bend. And it bends, 2 or 3 good times, it could break, and thus you might need that derailleur hanger. Am I going to carry 100 of those? No, I'm not. I am going to 9th and Pearl, and we're on 18th and Arapahoe. That's 4 or 5 blocks that way. 9 blocks this way, 15 blocks away, we have, at least several $100 worth of inventory that I don't have to pay for. Now I'm going to be paying retail price when I go purchase it, either myself or sending the customer there. Wait a few days and get it. They're basically holding inventory for this bike shop without knowing it, or at least, that's what is happening here. I'm sure they don't care. You go buy a derailleur hanger and they're happy to supply it, $25, $30 now. Generally, bike shops sell things for twice what they paid for. At least that's the general rule of thumb for bike parts underneath $100 for say. So if I had a dealer, which I do for bicycle derailleurs, such as derailleurhanger.com, generally I'd be paying $10, $15 for that part and selling it for $20, $22, $25, $30. Sometimes I do sell things for double, more than double what I paid for. Sometimes it's a 30% markup, especially if it's a more expensive item. It could be less, it could be more. It could be what Google's saying, what you can get it at the other bike shop, Amazon, eBay, my buddies, the fairness, certain things we do, get a little more than 100% markup. But believe me, it is not easy to run a bike business or any business in an era of real wages not increasing in a long time. That statistic always blew my mind. This idea that, well, the middle class is definitely bigger. We seem to be taxed more. There's more people. Why are real wages not moving up that much? We do know that debt amongst citizens in the United States has gone up substantially. I worked at a bank for 4 years. I was a teller. I learned a lot about banking. I learned a lot about what's in people's bank accounts and what people can afford. That gave me a upper hand, or at least a knowledge into what's in other people's bank accounts in negotiating. Oh, that's 42.2 up for $42. That was the original rate. Should probably go back to that rate. Right now it's 60, but it's on sale now on a Boulder deals. And the reason that is because it's a coupon. It goes out to all these customers that I've never met before. In that sense, it's good. But my $60 tune-up, listen to this, coupon, you probably already know, but they essentially sell your standard service or tangible item for half the cost of what you normally sell it for. And then they take a half of that and give you $15. So 60 divided by 2 for sale to you, 15 to me, 15 to Coupon, Boco Deal, Living Social, Amazon. There's more. I've been called a couple times from not even trying. These advertising agencies are trying to sell your service or your item, and in a sense, it can cheapen it, especially if you consistently do it and customers are waiting for it. Why did I do it? It's February. Last February 2013, my very first year of self-employment, that was the toughest month. Not even January. Even though January of last year, it was not until January 14th that I made a single deposit. That means there wasn't a whole lot of income in the beginning of January. You got New Year's. Business triples, quadruples, doubles, quintuples. 10 times. It is night and day in the bike business between summer and winter. In a place like Boulder, you got a real population dense area. We can definitely see riders riding at all times of the year. In other areas, I don't even know the market. I do know that there are some cities that have lots of bikers and have lots of commuters, but there are some cities that probably have no commuters or very, very few, and That all has to do with the cultural attitude, the how good the the roads for the cars are, the public transportation system. There's so many factors to what determines how people get around. The economic situation of the area, where the jobs are, where the homes are. I suppose an understanding of all those and a knowledge of what has worked in other areas of the world would allow us in the policymakers, the urban planning designers, how they would help a city along. If you put rational thought rather than fighting it out in the politic arena, you can create great cities. Boulder is well designed from the beginning. So that is one of the major reasons I chose to live here and still live here. I was studying urban studies at the University of Miami. It was Urban Studies 601, and I was taking it because I was a liberal studies major and I could take whatever I wanted. And I was curious to what that even meant. And after all that hitchhiking I did in the West Coast in my mid-20s, as well as living in the hotel business. My dad worked for Marriott. I got to stay in Australia, Japan, Portland, California, Overland Park, Kansas, Chicago, Illinois, St. Louis, Missouri, Kansas City, Missouri. And then, the traveling, myself and my family, I got to see a lot of the United States, some of the East Coast. I did not spend a whole lot of time in there. I feel pretty out of touch with the East Coast. But what I did get a sense of, especially in the West Coast where not all towns are right next to each other, different ways of cities interacting with the people based on the natural landscape and the course of history and how it developed. When I am in a town or thinking about moving to a town or living in a town, I want to be able to succeed in that town as a man. And how it's designed is a question that I ask. Boulder seemed to be the answer. That was for me, whatever that means. But a well-designed city would be good for the citizens. It would be good for the economy of the area. So that's why I came to Boulder, was because it spoke in a book, or the teacher, I really don't know what first mentioned it. I do know I heard about it years ago from Ryan Iguchi in German 3. He said there was a lot of artists and music people just playing on the main street. I really liked the fact that there was art and there was wealth in town. I like art, but I don't want to live in some, neighborhood with poor facilities or whatever and be some bohemian artist who doesn't have good food. Boulder has lots of good food. I hope I'm not sounding too snobbish by like this, my khaki jacket, my Titleist hat. But I like to look good. I like to have fun. So, long story short, this Morozumi spoke machine is great. It allows standard bike repair to have low inventory and still suit a variety of needs. Now it's time for me to get back to adjusting this micro adjuster, so when I put the spokes back in, it will be easy to toggle back and forth between colored spokes, which need a sliver of paint taken off first, and metal spokes without that extra layer. Black or silver, or anodized, you can just pop it right through. And previously I'd been charging $1 per spoke for colored spokes, because I have to take apart the whole machine in order to get this clean, I don't think I'm going to be doing that anymore. It's probably going to be a surcharge. It was fun, and it still is, but it requires an extra clean. So if I have the customer here, we can clean together. That would be great. If not, well, I'm certainly not just going to do it for free anymore. It makes a mess. But over Christmas, we did a bunch of them, and it was really fun. And now it's January and it snowed all day, so needless to say, I do not have a wheel building class customer anytime in the next week. Hopefully that'll come. Hopefully. Alright, I'm going to stop talking now. Hopefully I haven't embarrassed myself, if you know what I mean. And one side of the die to another. See